Joined thousands who took part in the protest on Father's Day on Sunday, calling on police to stop the practice known as stop-and-frisk. Last year, New York police officers stopped and interrogated residents nearly 700,000 times. Just 1 in 10 were arrested or ticketed. According to the New York Civil Liberties Union, about 87% of those stopped were black or Latino. According to the Wall Street Journal, the number of stops of black men between the ages of 14 and 24 exceeded the total city population of black men in that age range. Sunday's protest was a silent march organized by the NAACP. It stretched down more than 20 blocks of Fifth Avenue, from Harlem to Mayor Michael Bloomberg's mansion. After the march, I spoke to some of the young people involved. What's your name?
My name's Carmen Perez.
And have you ever been stopped?
Oh, I've been stopped and frisked plenty of times.
What do you mean plenty?
Well, I think it was a cultural norm. In my community, I come from California, a place called Oxnard, and they have gang enjustments there. And so for us, you know, when you play basketball, you play sports, you use a certain color, and so you also meet the profile. And it became the norm for me until I went away to college and I learned that that was injustice. And I learned to articulate, you know, being taken out of my environment and learning that what was happening to us wasn't something that should be happening. I think here in New York City, it's the same thing. Especially with young people, we don't want it to become normal, right? It becomes normal activity. It's kind of like, you know, young people are saying, well, I don't want to be a stop and frisk virgin. Yeah. You know, because it's cool. It's cool.
How old were you the first time you were stopped and frisked?
I was 11 years old.
And what happened then? You were 11 years old?
I was 11 years old. My brother was taking me home after a basketball game with my friends, and he actually met the profile. They pulled us over. They had us at gunpoint. They put us on the floor, and they hogtied him. And after being humiliated, I think, and that wasn't, you know, that wasn't the first, nor was it the last. I think a lot of times after that, you learn to kind of assume the position.
So explain what exactly they do to you from when you were 11 years old, and who is the they?
The police. And initially, you know, you have male police officers that pull you over, and they have to bring in women police officers to frisk you. You assume the position, you spread your legs. You spread your legs, you put your arms behind your back, you get, you know, felt up, and then, you know, sometimes depending on the situation, you get put on the floor for a couple of minutes, you have to sit down. It's a huge, it's one of the ugliest feelings ever. You know, you're humiliated. It's demeaning.
When was the last time you were stopped? Before college?
It was after college. There was an incident that happened where, you know, if you were in the vicinity, you got stopped. Not necessarily frisked, but, you know, it was just kind of like wrong place at the wrong time.
And what do you now say to the police?
You know, luckily, I'm not in those situations, but I do advocate for young people because I've been there. And you know, I think we need to have a conversation with police officers as community members, as activists, as young people. We need to create a space for that dialogue so that they can know what they're doing to us. And although they have to enforce this policy, it's not right. It's not right what we do to young people. Specifically, you know, Ramarley Graham, who was killed, you know, and didn't have anything on him. I think what you've seen with these policies, especially in Brownsville, you have, 93 out of 100 young people that are stopped and frisked.
Can you tell me your name?
Hello, hi, my name is Antonio Melendez. I'm one of the Purple and Golds, future of the movement, of the labor movement. I've been stopped plenty of times.
From where? Where do you live?
I was living in Morris Park and White Plains.
In Bronx?
The Bronx, yes, ma'am.
You lived somewhat near where Ramarley Graham lived?
Yes, that was in 233rd. It's on the north, I think the northwest.
How many times have you been stopped?
I've been stopped plenty of times, about 10 times, 15
Have you been
times.
arrested in any of those cases?
No, I have not.
So what do they do to you?
What they do, they tell me what I'm doing within this neighborhood, They stop me and they frisk me. They tell me to take out everything out of my pockets. The fear of their control over me, of a United States that we can walk free. And every time I'm walking, I'm scared. I'm scared what can happen if I question why are you stopping me. They do get offended. They do get harsh sometimes. They say you're in a neighborhood that you shouldn't be. And I thought we were free. And I was 11 my first time that they stopped me, and so forth. And it's humiliating as well. I had tears the first time and wondering, why did you stop me for no apparent reason?
Melendez and Carmen Perez stopped and frisked many times. I also talked to longtime civil rights activist and comedian Dick Gregory. I asked him if he was ever stopped and frisked.
Many times.
Many times?
It was my fault. It was dealing in the civil rights movement. That's altogether a different type of stop, because they have to be on their best behavior then, because there's too many cameras around.
What do you think of all these young people who are describing, like the young woman next to you who said, or the young man on the other side of you who said their first stop was when they were 11 years old?
Yeah, it's happened all the time. It just never there was never no spotlight on it. And that's what's so beautiful about this here. But let me tell you something that's interesting. Out of the thousands of black cops in America, you never turned on TV or picked up a newspaper and see where white families complaining that some black cop shot their child or mother or father in the head 40 times. Now you ask the question, are black cops more spiritual than white cops? Are black cops better trained? No. Black cops know that white folks ain't gonna tolerate it. That's why you don't see that. And when we get to the point that we say we're not going to tolerate it, now what would have to happen for black folks to stop tolerating it? Let cops beat up black folks' car. It ain't no accident. You had never heard a black person say, that white rich guy shot my car. It's something inside of me that wouldn't tolerate it. I tolerate you, my mother, my children, my family, but don't mess with my car. And you see that. And when that and this will help that change. This will help that to come out before there's an incident and send a message. Or if we was together enough, if we had one Christmas boycott against police brutality, then the white folks that's not involved in it, the turkey growers, Disneyland, all you major folks, they would come out and stop it. And when they nod their head, it stops. And this march here just don't affect New York. You got police departments all over America now that send people here to watch this. And the other thing, that's the solemn thing, they lose billions of dollars every year selling police brutality cases. And eventually the taxpayers they're not going to tolerate it. They're going to say, wait a minute, stop. And this is what happened when you really, all my life when I've seen a siren, nobody ever told me I pray for them, that where they're going, the purple they're going to, the siren. It's funny praying for a cop if you don't know, but maybe when you think about, as a little boy for Christmas, I never wanted a police car, and I didn't know nothing about cop brutality. I always wanted a fire truck. And I hope it'll come the day that children will want a fire truck and a police car, and then we know it's over.
Dick Gregory, what gives you hope?
I don't believe in hope. We got in outer space, it wasn't hope. We made rockets, it wasn't hope. You bring in the hardcore scientists and shine a light on it and say, we have to do this. If I had a brain tumor, I don't hope it's going to get out. I'm going to ask you who's the best brain surgeon here, and I'll go to him. And that's what's going to happen. You set the mindset of young folks that said, what you doing here goes out there and say to young, this don't have to happen. That is not all right. I come up in a black community when a cop beat up you and your brother, they say, well, thank God they didn't kill you. That's no more. That's no more.
Longtime civil rights activist and comedian Dick Gregory. Along the march, I spoke to a Marine veteran and lawyer named John Covington.
Well, I've been stopped several times up in the Bronx.
You're a Vietnam vet?
Yes, I am.
You come back from Vietnam, and how many times have you been stopped?
Over a dozen times.
Have you ever been arrested?
Not for that, no.
Not for the stops and frisks. So they stop you.
Yes.
But
then once they find out I'm an attorney and a minister, they just sort of, oh, I'm sorry, we made a mistake.
So you've been stopped and frisked a dozen times. You're a lawyer, a veteran, and a minister. Right. So the lawyer, does that weigh in?
I think so. Yeah, I think they don't, well, we would not mess with him because he knows the law, you know, and I, you know, I guess that's what they decide to do.
Why do you think this is happening in this city? And why you?
I'm black. That's simply what it is. People don't want to say the truth, but it's racism. It is racism. And the excuse that the mayor gives is that, well, the crime rate is so high in the minority neighborhood, black and Hispanic neighborhood. That's why. That's why he put more emphasis on that. But I think that's a farce. That's crazy. You need to get the statistics right. If you have 750,000 stops a year, there's something wrong with that. 87.5% is minority? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right now, I mean, the march started up at 110th. We're walking through the wealthiest neighborhood of Manhattan. Right now, we're coming up to Mayor Bloomberg's house. We're on the Upper East Side.
Right. That's right. And I was aware of that. And I said, can't say anything when I get there because it's a silent march. But I got a lot on my mind. I think when I get home, I'm going to send an email. Send a couple of emails out.
To who?
To the mayor's office.
You were a Marine?
Yes. 3rd Marine Division.
Why do the police say they're stopping you when they stop you over and over and over again?
The first excuse come out of their mouth is there was a crime in the area and we're looking for someone. That's the first thing comes out of their mouth. Or the second thing is we were looking for somebody you fit the profile, the description of the person. Garbage. It's all garbage.
You work at the United Nations?
I did when I'm retired now. I'm an old man now.
How old are you?
Well, we keep that quiet.
Most stops and frisks are of young African-American Latino men under 30. You've been stopped and frisked over 30?
Yes. Yes. And no other men my age have been stopped, and older have been stopped.
And what is the feeling when they're frisking you?
Invasion.
What?
Invasion. They're invading me as if I was invading the beach of Normandy or something. I become a piece of property to them, and they can do anything they want to me because they're the police. You want to have respect for the police, but they don't have respect for us. That's the key, the whole thing. It's about respect, and don't practice racism.
John Covington, Jr., Vietnam vet, former Marine, lawyer, and minister. During Sunday's Stop and Frisk silent march, I also spoke to actor Dee Williams. Yep, he played drug dealer Preston Bodie Broadus on the hit HBO series The Wire.
Definitely, I'm here to support the Stop and Frisk. I was invited by the NAACP and also by NAN, so I'm definitely here to support. I'm from New Jersey, but I'm in Manhattan every day, so I'm definitely subject to this policy also.
Have you ever been stopped and frisked?
Well, luckily not in Manhattan, but in some of the outer boroughs. And like I said, I'm from New Jersey, so we don't have a Stop and Frisk policy per se, but we do have a very high, racial profiling, incident rate. So I have been stopped, but just not in New York. But that air and that feeling is always there with young black men.
And how do you feel when you get stopped and frisked?
Well, I mean, you feel like anybody would feel anytime they're, violated, robbed, humiliated. It's just a feeling of, a sense of helplessness. And then the helplessness turns into anger, and the anger turns into rage when you're abused or, misused so many times. So even when it's not you directly, you feel angry for the people that it happens to. So it's a cumulative effect. So short answer, you feel bad.
How old are you?
30 plus.
How many times have you been stopped?
In my life, on foot, I really probably couldn't count. Maybe less than 10. Huh. Maybe. Possibly, but like I said, it's a sad thing that it becomes a kind of natural with young black men. It kind of becomes second nature with us. In a way that we expect to be stopped, or we expect to be bothered, or we expect to be harassed.
How are you involved with The Wire?
I play the character Bodie Preston Broadus, and he starts out as a low-level dealer, and he ends up moving up the ranks until the pressure of the life becomes too much for him, and he has to make adjustments, and ultimately has a tragic end.
And President Obama wrote to you guys that he liked the show, or you just heard he did?
Well, actually, it was kind of a word-of-mouth message that came to the cast. So then we ended up putting together a package of autographed posters and DVDs and things and sent it to him. Yeah.
And what do you think the message of The Wire is that President Obama and everyone else should understand?
Well, I think the biggest theme throughout the series was that no one is basically good or bad.
Actor Dee Williams, who starred as Bodie in the HBO series The Wire. There were all generations in Sunday's march. I spoke to a young activist and a great-grandmother.
Joyce Williams, and I'm in solidarity with all the young people that are constantly stopped and frisked. I see it constantly in my community. Unfortunately, I'm also a victim of being stopped and frisked by New York City's police. About 6 or 8 months ago, I was stopped, manhandled, physically manhandled, woman-handled, with the policewoman digging in my bra.
You're a great-grandmother?
I'm a great-grandmother. I have great-grandchildren.
Did
yes.
they arrest you?
No, they didn't. They didn't. What I'm trying to do is find out, was there a report? So I wrote to the governor. I'm smart enough to know that you don't go into a precinct to tell policemen about their friends that stop and frisk you. You don't do that. I'm not that stupid. So, and I know Bloomberg isn't going to do anything against the police. So I wrote to Governor Cuomo. Let the ex-attorney general, whatever his name was, whatever his title was, let it work its way down. That's the tactic I took.
Why did the police say they stopped you?
Because they could.
Were you in this area? We're on the Upper East Side.
No. I was in the Bronx where I live. I had just left my apartment, going to pay bills with bill money in my pocket. When the police walked away from me, my bill money was gone. That's what I'm upset about, because if they're stealing from great-grandmothers, they're stealing from these young kids also.
My name is Thenjiwe. Why I'm out here today is I've been organizing in New York City for years, whether it's Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell's case, organizing around Trayvon Martin, Troy Davis, but also organizing around the fact that young people of color, young black and brown men and women in this city and in cities throughout this country cannot walk down the street without being profiled, cannot go from point A to point B without someone, particularly a police officer or security force, identifying them with criminal activity. And I'm here today because it's not just them stopping them, asking them questions, but they're stopping them and they're communicating a very powerful message to them, which is, you are black, you are brown, you are a person of color, you are in a city where you live, and there's something really wrong with you. And that hurts.
Voices of Sunday's Stop, and Frisk silent march. And that does it for the broadcast. If you'd like a copy, go to our website at democracynow.org. I'm Amy Good.